Well, howdy. It's been a year. Since Nick and I started doing this show weekly, and last week was my vacation, but this next week, our dear Nicholas is going to be going a Viking. He will set sail and for to pillage and plunder and do all those wonderful things. And so he'll be out for a little bit. So we thought we would say let's do this as a season finale kind of a thing, a chance to do the good clip show thing, look back a little bit, see how the years treat us, what's been our takeaways, things like that. But we will come back. Don't worry, fear not. We will return, and of course Nicholas will return with the plunder and booty of many foreign lands. Nick, are you excited for to set sail and take on the high seas?
I'm still getting over the plundering and the booty comment. Tonight's show means a lot for a lot of reasons. I think I feel pride in what we have all come together as teammates in this. To have started a level of dialogue in a time that seems like it desperately needs it. I feel a little bit of sadness in that way that you're going to miss something. But the good news is, and I like the way you set it up. This is not hitting a stop button. This is not even hitting a pause button. This is hitting a transformation button, so that we can return and take things to that next level. So I'm excited about that. And I think that breeds an opportunity for us to go out and, for those teammates and friends and family that have been paying attention to the show for a while, to put into action all the theory and all the concepts we've been talking about. And by that, I mean engaging, reading up, making themselves as aware as possible, and engaging in the process that is set before us to do that. So I think tonight, kind of going through my mind, is this feeling of like, if you remember in the 80s, I've been watching the show Cobra Kai and absolutely, absolutely loving every minute of it. I'm not even going to hesitate to say that. But one thing I remember about movies like The Karate Kid or Rocky was a big trend of movies in the 80s was that when you saw the sequel started with the opening of the end of the last movie. So when you got Rocky 3, you saw how Rocky 2 ended and it brought you up to speed. When you watched The Karate Kid Part 2, you saw where Karate Kid Part 1 was and it brought you up to speed. And I think, kind of revisiting our show tonight and talking about where it's gone and where it's come from and where it's going, it's a special thing. And there's a lot of highlights in there that we can hit tonight on the show. And I think that's why I kind of wanted to just have tonight be kind of a reminiscing of a look back. There's some topics out there that we can address, sure. And we're always open for conversation. But I think thematically, just looking over the show is going to be a great opportunity for us to look at this season and just say, wow, we were able to do a lot of things and it meant a lot to all of us.
No, I like what you said there, but this isn't even a pause button. It's more of a transformation. Like I said, it's only going to be a few weeks that we're going to have to be off. But, we're going to be able to reposition some things. So we're actually going to be able to push this show further and do a few different things we haven't been able to do before. So this is a good thing. But like we said, we're not, we kind of have to keep it a little bit on the DL for what's going to come next period here. But let's take a look back here. Actually, so you're getting caught up on Cobra Kai. I'm actually getting caught up on The Expanse on Amazon.
Okay.
I did not get into it when it originally started. I was sort of excited because it had Tom Jane in it, who I'm big fan of from the Punisher reboot they did a bunch of years ago, and he was Deep Blue Sea, which is that's an unsung hero. So, but yeah, I didn't get into it the first time. I only got I didn't even get a full episode in, but now I'm going back and looking at it. It's like, man, this is really good. It's a good hard sci-fi movie sort of show. A lot of hard physics in it. So I mean, it's actually true science fiction, not the science fantasy you normally get. But so looking back over the year, Nick, what's something that has stood out to you? What are some things, maybe some shows that we did, some people we talked to, what are some things that really stood out to you?
If I think about it, just kind of historically looking at it, I'm just looking at our arcing theme here. We had discussed. I'm going to kind of do that year in review here, if you will. Right. So here we go. I hope it doesn't feel like an in memoriam. So we had talked about wanting to put something together, and we didn't really know how or what, but we had some ideas, and we were thinking about names, and we were thinking about ways to have some good conversation, and how could we do it? How could we do it in a not looking to monetize, not looking to be all crazy, but rather to get the message out there and to talk to people and have good conversation. And so we'd come together and we put some shows together. And I remember we were doing it, I think once every couple of weeks. And we were enjoying it. We were having a good time. And then this thing came out about, well, you need to stay in your house. It's going to be 15 days and we need to just flatten the curve. So it's going to feel weird, but stay in your house for 15 days and let's see what happens. And so as we kind of went through, going through some of that and seeing what was going on, and then the days went beyond 15, and then things went beyond that. And
we all know what happened after that.
Right. You can check out the book at the public library and it'll tell you the ending of that story. But what I'm getting at is, we started to expand, and even through those times, I think we found solace in finding a way to express ourselves and our voices, because the rest of the world was still going on, even in a COVID world. The economy was doing what it did. The military was doing what it does. The government was doing what it does. Faith, education, entities within our country were still moving and operating. And then we started to bring on guests. We had we brought our dear friend Candy on, and we enjoyed having her. And we brought on some of our other friends. We brought on our friend Doug Masters, and we had fun with him. We had fun with bringing out all different types of conflicting and competing ideals and values. And we brought out musicians from Austin, Texas, that were so proud joined us on the show and shared different perspectives and thoughts. And I will say, the closing of the country certainly impacted them deeply. But I'm proud to say that our friend of the show is going on and doing wonderful things. But we carried that into, well, do we want to keep it as a two-man show? Do we want to expand it out? And we did. We kind of, like inhaling and exhaling, we kind of expanded and contracted, and then we went through the summer of chaos, right? I mean, it was just out of control. I mean, we just saw things that we had just couldn't, I certainly didn't feel prepared for. I mean, I remember as a kid seeing the LA riots, but I mean, this was in my hometown. I was walking with a friend one night and they were like, oh, well, we better not go downtown because there's helicopters flying around and there's people on rooftops. And I thought, this is incredible. And so we made it through that summer, and yet the show still continued and people still checked in, and we grew our base a little, and we started to get the message out there without advertising. It was because of our friends and family and people that checked in, and that's what means the most. It was the truest definition of an organic grassroots movement. Then as the summer came to a close, we entered into the peak of the election season and went through that experience, together and apart as a country, both ideologically separated and physically separated. And it was kind of a bizarre experience, but our republic held true, and we persevered on through that. And then as we made it through the holidays and came across this year mark and came to where we were, recently we had a chance to have, I think the highlight for me, was having a chance to have our friend Frank on the show. That was probably the highlight of the year. And I want to thank you for coordinating and putting so much of that together. That was outstanding. And I sincerely appreciate that. Thank you very much, Alex. And I think, second to that, I would say, and in a different way, I'm equally proud of it, but in a different way, I would say, what I think it is? I'm proud that we're still here, because so many times we've said, victory goes to those who believe in it the most, but believe in it the longest. And the most part can sometimes be easy because you can just get loud, right? I'm right. We win. Hashtag America. And it's fighting when you're down, right? It's still going. It's and it's engaging people on the hard topics like critical conversation. And I think that's what's been so important. And I think those are probably the things that I'm most proud of, that we're still here and that you're still there and that our friends, family, and fans are still with us and growing all the time. I think that's what I think what I appreciated the most, what I loved the most was having Frank on. That meant the world to me. But I think what I'm most proud of is that we're still here and we're still swimming. We're still kicking our legs as much as we can.
Exactly. 2 quick points from the Peanut Gallery, and don't get me wrong, we're gonna look at y'all a little bit more closely here in a second. But yeah, so it has, Nick is the one who's going a Viking here. He's taking the dragon-headed ship out to look for exotic spices and find new and interesting people, that kind of thing. But just for a few weeks. But we're going to take the time to reboot a few things and look at doing a few new things. Y'all are going to appreciate it. I would suggest that let there be some time. You can be with your family or smoke a cigar, or take a little walk. Clear the head. Trust me, all of the problems of the world will still be there when we get back. I assure you. Secondly, yes, I would love to get that handsome Jason McLean on from Not Another Bible Study. I'd really like to have him on, but he's a hard get. He's a very, very busy man. I'd love to have him on. Nick, Nick's really the guy who gets to do those other shows. Unfortunately, I don't know if we can have him on, but we'll try. But as far to your point, I completely agree. I think there's like talking to Candy. I think there were some things that she said they really struck home about how to actually fix things. What do we do how do we actually move forward? Because that's really what the show is about, right? Again, there's a reason it's called Not Playing Politics. What's very easy to sort of lose track of is that it's, and this ties to what you said, we don't want to be like every other show. Every other show, like don't get me wrong, love Crowder, love Shapiro, love Tim Pool, love blah, da, 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 da. There's a million shows out there, though, that's saying, here's what's crazy with the world. Here's things going wrong. Here's all the bad things. Look at how crazy these people are. We don't want to be that show. We wanted to be a show that actually had conversations to move forward outside of the standard left-right dichotomy, which, as the image that you're seeing on your screen right now is sort of indicates, is it's a game. Republican, Democrat, these are game pieces. Now, I will say, I think one of the big things that we've really seen develop over the last year, and it's been sort of building over the last 10, maybe 15, maybe you can go really all the way back to Bush's first term. But something that's been slowly building, and maybe this was Rush's, ultimate legacy is that over the last definitely it's very, very, very pronounced for the last 10 to 15 years, we're seeing a real stratification of positions in what people believe. These parties have gone from being regional parties that are sort of things that are used to just to give a red team, blue team, let's push the ball, rah rah rah. Because as we stated, again, very premise of the show, 2,000 years ago, bread and circuses was what you used to keep people out of politics. Now we've managed to take politics and make it bread and circuses. We've made it the game. We never fix anything, but we're fighting over the same problems for 20, 30 years. Go back and watch every episode of The West Wing. If you want, you'll see every issue that we are dealing with today, they were talking about back then. So we wanted to take that step and say, no, let's break this out. Now, again, and we're really seeing it the last few. I think it's become more clear that we do have a leftist, rightist divide that's sort of showing up in the political parties, but that metamorphosis is not yet done. But we didn't want to be Republican, Democrat. We wanted to be, let's actually solve problems. How do we fix things? What are the actual problems? Because I think it's very clear, and I think as we've seen, just because somebody says it's a problem doesn't mean it really is, right? Or it may be that there is an issue, but it's not, but they're looking at it in a way that's designed to not let it be fixed. I'm most proud that we're still here having this conversation. And this is my big thing, that we found a group of people who are willing to engage in that conversation. You don't just want rah, let's go my side. You want to have a real conversation about really fixing these problems. That's what I'm most proud of. I love the fact that every week we get to come and hear from Titan and Cheese Freak Ginger Snap and Susan Robertson and a Salty One and just all the other ne'er-do-wells that like to hang out and comment on our show. And those who don't, get a chance to comment, we appreciate y'all too. We love y'all too, because y'all are here ultimately because you want to be a part of something that's really going to try and elevate the conversation and not just get in the mud. You don't want to simply play politics. You want to, as I've said, politics is supposed to be the tool that we use to build the house we all live in. You want to build that house. You don't want to destroy it. As we've seen over the last year, destroying is easy. Building is hard, and y'all are here for the building. And I love all y'all for it.
Well, I think something we're seeing, whether it's, some of the big stories out there right now, right? If you get the arcing kind of thematic topics that are out there are going to be, one would say, obviously, the situation regarding the border, right? You're seeing numbers now that have been unchallenged in the history of some of these departments that track them. And we're looking at, major things with regard to national security and things such as how border security plays into that. And, those kind of campaign level arcing thematic trends, right? And then on the other side, you've got stories where you're looking at people that are now starting to break away and things like Senate Bill 1, right? The way that they're going to push back on the voting, what they're trying to articulate is the voting rights bill, and digging into what's there. And you're seeing that pushback come, but that's still all keeping it in the political realm, right? Where you're seeing, I think, more of the engagement at the levels of power that impact our lives and our children and our future is where you're seeing families and teachers and people who are declaring themselves openly and publicly as firm believing Christians to push back against school boards with regard to critical race theory. And that to me is a shift, because now it's not, let's talk about Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden and Donald Trump. It's, let's talk about the Loudoun County school system. Let's talk about Virginia. Let's talk about Texas. Let's talk about these states that are pushing things back. You're getting states. Iowa just, delivered it's now an act. It's a law. It's been signed to ban and to prevent critical race theory and its distribution the way it was coming out in school systems. And so what I'm getting at is, if there's been that jump, I know for a while we were talking in pre-production the other day about concerns about, well, why aren't we going through the channels of government to fix these things, and how frustrated we all were. And then it was like, well, wait a minute, maybe those aren't the most organic channels. And maybe the founding fathers saw and knew that with regard to the argumentation surrounding the concept of federalism itself. You're seeing states take back power. Look at Texas alone. Texas has been working towards constitutional carry, voting rights, transgender rights in sports, and abortion rights. From all those perspectives, abortion perspectives, sexual identity perspectives, gender identity perspectives, they're taking on mask mandates and all these things, and you're seeing it. But democracy is messy. but it is inspiring to see people getting engaged, and in a healthy manner, in the channels that are designed for engagement, not destroying property and threatening people's livelihood and safety. And so thematically, what I think we've tried to do with the show, and I hope that we leave that the echo or the resonating point here tonight, is get involved, do something about it. We love that all of you come and listen, and we love that people are sharing and jumping on the website and checking things out. That's awesome. But it's not only our right, it's our duty to participate in this American experience and this American experiment. And I think tonight is our official call to action, you know, and it's not for anything relating to violating laws or safety or anything like that, but rather engaging the channels of democracy, engaging school board elections, engaging people to go, if you're not going to run for school board, go to the meetings, put your voice out there. All of you have a voice. Write to your senator or congressperson. We know you can write. We can see it on the internet. You know, get out there and do it. And please, we're so proud. We're so humbled. We're so honored for you to take the time to share with us. You know, as Alex was saying, you know, we're coming through this time in here in the summer, and things are going to kind of cool off. Well, guess what? As schools open up in the fall, as campaign season starts, because we'll be, believe it or not, once we come out of the summer, we've got about a year until the elections, the midterms. You know, who's getting invested? Who's joining party campaigns? Who's finding candidates that they're going to get behind? Anybody can wait for one day a year and go pull a lever in a box or push a button on a computer. What are you doing the 364 others? And I'm saying this for and towards myself openly in front of all of you as well. So I think that's what it is. If this show has acted as nothing more than the spark on the kindling, even for the handful of us that gather to share our time on these episodes, which mean the world to us. I mean, this is something that Alex and I care very dearly about. I think that's the lasting mark and legacy that we'd want of this show. Whether the show runs another 5 years or this is the final episode ever, which I don't believe it to be. But if that were the case, I would hope that what would go on would be the legacy. I remember someone once saying to me, and you guys can Google it, I'm sure, but if you were to do a word count, if anybody out there can pull that off and actually count the number of words that were part of the Gettysburg Address, it doesn't take a lot of words. It just takes the right words in the right order. Putting your opinion on paper and sharing it, or going to those meetings. That's the action that I think that Alex and I would say we pray takes place. Alex?
I couldn't agree more. This is, like I said, the show's about not playing politics. It's about actually getting out there and making the change. Like you said, a couple months ago, I think you can hear it in the show. There was a lot of frustration. There was some depression. There was this question of how do we do this? How do we fix this? Because I think a lot of people a lot of people looked to the whole Trump administration saying, yes, we're going to get a second term. We're going to be able to really make some changes, some systemic changes. But I think the big revelation I've had is we were still looking for someone to save us instead of us being the thing that actually made the change. We were still fundamentally, even though he wasn't a politician, we were still looking to politics to save us instead of us, the men and women of this country, rising up and making the changes. You've been harping on the school board thing for a while, even in our conversations off air, because it does show individuals on the ground level, people know you've never heard of and will probably never hear of again, making impacts and altering the tide. One school board at a time, one county at a time. These things don't seem like much now. But this is how we got in this situation. We lost each hill. We lost each county. We lost each school board. We lost each prosecutor and DA. We lost these people one piece at a time. That's how we're going to get it back. And the one thing that's been wonderful about having Trump gone was, and this was the problem that I saw at first, and I had to realign. It's like, no, this is ultimately what we kind of wanted for at least a little bit, was we lost Rush. We lost Trump. I mean, well, Trump's still around, but I mean, from a political standpoint, we lost Trump, but we lost Rush. It's like there's no one left to unify us. And let me take something from that wonderful person that was mentioned earlier, that lovely and amazing Jason over from Not Another Bible Study. He talks about how he believes the next big move, from a religious standpoint, is decentralization, no longer having, the big name preachers and evangelists running around. I think that may be the same thing with politics. If we really are about federalizing, if we really are about putting power back in the hands of the states and the counties and taking it away from the federal government, then we can't have one big leader. We got to have hundreds and thousands of little leaders in every county, in every state, making these fights. The fight has to be on the ground. It has to be every single one of us. And so where this current calendrical year started with a lot of frustration and wondering where we're going, I think where we are now is saying, Nick, to your point, it's going to be the soccer mom showing up and running for that school board saying, no, you're not going to indoctrinate my children with hatred for the races, hatred for this nation, hatred for God. You're not going to do that. I'm not going to allow you to do that. It's going to be people who are attorneys who just had a job, who are happy doing what they're doing. It's like, no, I'm going to run for DA because I want to lock up these people who are destroying our neighborhoods. It's going to be the guy running a car shop or a doctor or your local doctor saying, no, I'm going to run for Congress. I'm going to run for the state Senate. It has to be every county, every school board that we are fighting for. And to do that, I think it's too easy to get lost in the personality of one person. It's easy to think that one person is going to fix all of our problems. And I think the problem is we hadn't figured that out. Trump paved the way. It is time for us to actually take down these walls and retake the city.
So I wouldn't, and this is just from the conversational piece, I don't look necessarily to Donald Trump, the person, for as we've talked about before. I think for some people, whether they look at politicians or they look at, some would say, teachers or doctors or leaders or whoever it is that they want to look at, I think many times what resonates beyond the person is the message, right? We had this chat a while back, actually, with regard to faith. And of course, with the absolute recognition of who Christ is, there's no question about that. But the point is, it wasn't whether we talk about St. Paul's letters to people or whomever. We don't require for St. Paul to be here. We don't require for King David to be here. We don't require for Peter to be here. We don't require for the Mother Mary to be here. I mean, we would love that. I mean, that would be a blessing. But what I'm getting at is, but their message can live on in infinity, right? It can last into eternity. I'm not remotely comparing any of those people with a political movement, but what I'm simply saying is, in comparison, if there were things that are changing, it's maybe that party alliances are changing. You're seeing elections in border communities and border cities in Texas that are flipping to Republican because they're looking for that. I think people many times would say that if you wanted to go on the law enforcement route, that's much more aligned with the right and with the Republican Party. And so you're looking at places, and are people necessarily becoming Republican? I don't know. Are they necessarily becoming conservative? I don't know. I think they're looking at things like, we want more security around us, and we know which party will deliver that. It's dangerous, I think, whenever you see certain ideals or values aligning with certain parties. But what I would say is that I think between you and me, and the entire internet, I would say the ushering in of more of a nationalist populist movement, and how that has trickled down to the state governments where people can more adequately and easily engage the government, is something that I think is the shift that took place. If there's a shift, I think it's been in the engagement from the government now, from the bottom up perspective and not the top down. You can clear the way that I look at it even is no longer even conservative Republican, or conservative liberal Democrat Republican, so much as it is, do you have a federal perspective or a state's perspective? Do you have a state's perspective or a local, so do you have a national or a local perspective? Do you have a global or a local or a local perspective? And I think some of the shifts you're seeing are coming from the perspectives that, well, if the federal government can't get it done in those ways, states will. You and I talked in pre-production. The previous administration had the House, the White House, and the Senate, and a majority on the court. Well, again, however you choose to view that perspective regarding the Supreme Court, and they weren't passing gun legislation the way that they are in certain states now. They weren't even close, I don't believe. But you're seeing the states do it. And at what point do you have enough? You've got states that have reciprocity carrying over. You've got states, I believe it was 46, that had recognized constitutional carry. What I'm getting at is the beauty of federalism, the beauty of the balance of states' rights is where it comes about, that people have that autonomy and independence, because living in, even though we can travel as freely as we can, and we can travel as quickly as we can and as cost effectively, and we can communicate as rapidly, instantaneously with the internet now. California is still not Massachusetts. North Dakota is not Florida. And that recognition that we can share a common value system. And it's funny because I think here's the flip side, just kind of coming to me as we're chatting this out. With those who attack our institutions, like saying the Pledge of Allegiance at school, praying in school, standing for the flag at football games, playing the national anthem at football games, basketball games. By breaking those things down, what's interesting is that states have now stepped in and taken things upon themselves. It's almost like the federal side was its own demise. So you're seeing shifts in things like business perspectives and ideologies. You're seeing channels now that we're creating checks on checks. Whether it's school boards, whether it's a state offices, state legislatures, whether it's community legislatures. In Austin, there's been shifts with regard to voting, and hopefully you'll see a better representation of the population of Austin being represented in the city council. But I think that's an interesting thing to see. And I want to say real quickly, 272 is the number of words in the Gettysburg Address. So it doesn't take a lot of words. It just takes the right ones, the ones that are thoughtful. And I think if we can get before city councils and town halls and school boards, if you feel like you wouldn't be the best fit for the school board position, do you know someone who has children? Do you know someone who has has some skin in the game? Go talk to them. All of us can at least know some. Alex, you and I have had this talk multiple times.
Yes,
your incredible wife, I think, would be a game-changing presence on any of those boards for her intellect alone.
Yes, she absolutely would. She could probably even do better. In fact, she has thought about, and actually not the school board, but city council and a few other places in the past. But right now, she's got a few things to get through.
Sure.
But to your point, this is, like you said, I'm not interested. 5 years ago, making someone vote Republican wouldn't do anything. because the party wasn't where it needed to be. We have seen a radical change over the last 4 years, and definitely this year. But what we have seen is an actual stratification of the parties, ideologies, thoughtfulness, and what we're seeing the metamorphosis. And really, you could say it started to hone in with the Tea Party. It started to become more grassroots oriented, more populist. Trump was the thing that broke through, right? But now that he's sort of out of the spotlight, it is time. What this is going to allow is for everyone to rise up. I don't want was it Cheese Freak? Yeah. So Cheese Freak, you asked what can you do? Get in contact with the Republican Party in your county. Sign up. Go to meet them. Go to talk to them. Sometimes the most anyone who's done any kind of social engineering studies, sociology, things like that, anthropology, what you find is that the most important people in any web, right, of power, of hierarchy, it's not the person on top. In fact, it's almost never the person on top. Usually the most important people in these webs seem to be off to the side. They don't necessarily seem to be the people that everyone sees, because what they've done is they become these nexus points of meeting people, knowing people, saying, hey, get your butt out there and do these things. Oftentimes the people we need, Nick, are people who are off doing their thing. They're like, why would I bother with this? I'm off living my life or going a Viking and, stuff like that. Dr. Martin Luther King was actually one of these. Like, he was in it, but he was actually pushed by several people. Just because you're not the person in front of the camera doesn't mean you're not one of the most important people in that county. Often it's the person who knows everyone who can say, hey, get your butt out there. Hey, you need to go talk to this person. Or, hey, I know you're the guy running for office, but you have this problem. I know a guy who's in the middle of that. Let me go have you talk to him so y'all can work out an actual solution. Let's fix these things. We're not saying go join the Republican Party because they're the ones. It's simply that's the banner under which the people on the right are meeting. Don't go to become a drone. Go to be the thing that changes it. Again, to pick a pun here, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. If every one of us goes, we join, we talk, we become the influencers in the party. We bring the power back to us. We don't want power in Washington anymore. We want it back at the local level, state, county, city. To Nick's point, I don't want the Republican Party in Texas to look like the Republican Party in Georgia or California or Wyoming, and certainly not Alabama. But even more than that, I don't want the Republican Party in Ellis County to look like the Republican Party in Travis County. Are we going to have a lot of similarities? Of course, we're Texas.
Yeah,
but there are.
First off, roll tide, and second off, excuse me there, Alex. There's probably going to be an awful lot more tattoos out of Travis County than there would be out of maybe Dade County. So
that is true.
Throwing that out there as someone who has had the honor and pleasure and humbled joy of walking the streets of Travis County for many a decade, I can tell you it. I'm willing to bet the number of shaggy-haired, multiple PhD carrying, tattooed bagel enthusiast is mostly going to come out of a place like Travis.
Exactly. So, like you said, I don't want them to look the same. They shouldn't, because again, we're Texas, but Dallas is Dallas and Austin is Austin. And again, technically, Dallas is in Dallas County. Alice is just south. I'm just saying, with those regions, the North Texas region versus the Austin region, these are very, very different places. I don't want Austin to have all the same rules and regulations and do all things the same way I do it, because that's not going to work. And going out to El Paso, I want El Paso County to look different. I want the people around the Rio Grande to have a different My mom was born in Del Rio, Texas. I want that town and that county to have their own feel, to do things that affect them and benefit them. It is insane right now, the idea that somebody in Washington D.C. is going to make laws and rules that affect how someone living in Del Rio, Texas, gets to use water, or what they get to buy. This is insane. We have to take the power away, and we do that by becoming part of it. Now, to Titan's point, that it's not just sufficient to do your best. We have to mentor people. We have to teach. That is season 2. If this is our season finale, we're gonna take a little bit of a break, so Nick can go running around with Beowulf. But when we come back, so season 2 happens, right? And there will be a season 2, one way or the other. We're going to talk about that. It's like I said early on, this show is not just about complaining about how crazy them Dems be or those leftists be, right? That's not our show. That show already exists in numerous ways. What's funny is we've even got comic book and geeks. That's what they're talking about now, because leftism has become so insane. Like, you can't even watch Lord of the Rings, like the new Lord of the Rings thing. I don't even want to get into that.
Well,
my point is,
sorry, Alex.
Excuse
me. If just real quickly to plug Cobra Kai once again. To your point, you could not have been more spot on, and I'm glad you called it, because you are significantly more in touch with the pop culture zeitgeist in the world of arts and entertainment that way than I am. But I would say this, even in watching the show, this is a show on Netflix. Netflix is by no means your ultra right-wing leaning, production company. And even in Netflix, the show, the kids go on and one of them gets caught, and you can tell the writers are clearly, having fun with this. And the teacher comes out and is like, are you violating someone's sense of identity within this self or something? And one of them's like, I'm sorry, ma'am, I'm having a micro and macro aggression in this safe space. Like, and it was delivered in a way that was completely designed to be just ham-fisted right in your face, right? So yeah. Like you can feel it getting to the point where it's just this like, oh, give me you know what I mean? Like, are we fundamentally helping people? And the people that they're kind of dragging in the episode, not that I am advocating this because I work in education, but it's administrators. Like, that's who they're going, you know what I mean? Like, they're going after them. They're making it kind of like it was in the 80s, where like the teachers were like these lame, you know what I mean? Like Back to the Future.
Yeah.
We always had. So they're kind of doing it in that way, but they're doing it with the 21st century perspective of that. So excuse my interruption. You could not have been more spot on with that recognition. I did not know that was taking place in comic book circles, but you can see it in pop culture. And when you start to look, the worst thing a movement can become, even just as much as being complacent, is boring, unoriginal, or not cool.
Yes. No, absolutely. No, absolutely. Okay. Hold on. Let me too many thoughts in one time. That's the problem, right? It's like everyone runs for the door. Because I saw what Susan said. I'm going to come back to that here in a second. That's I really want to talk about that. That may be a great place to end. But yeah, right now, like, you would think about it, but right now, the comic book industry is being. This is a great example. The American comic book industry is having its lunch eaten. It has become exclusively liberal. I mean, stupidly liberal for years. I honestly haven't bought. I just recently started buying comics again. Because the last series I was reading ended. It was called Fables. It's a great story, really, really great. But basically, because I had dropped out of Marvel years ago because I was sick and tired of it. I'm tired of this, and it's become such a thing that people who are even traditionally liberal have come out and they're talking about this, like, we can't even get good stories out of you anymore. And this is how bad it's gotten. Marvel manga, which are comic books printed in Japan originally. They're created by Japanese artists. They are outselling all American-made comics. And what I mean by outselling, I mean a series called One Piece started in 1998. It has as of this year, has sold more copies than every Batman comic and graphic novel ever sold since the 1930s. I think it's 1933. It was 32, 33 when he was invented. And I'm talking about every language. Comics are translated French and Spanish. I mean, comics are everywhere. Every issue of Batman, if you take them all and you take this one thing that started in 1998 and you compare them, he's outsold it. And he's still writing this story. There's another one, Demon Slayer. They came out. This thing just debuted a few years ago. Like it's a really new one, and I think the anime just came out in English last year. Outsold all of Marvel Comics for 2020. That's how bad it's getting. And the thing is, there's this rift that's starting to evolve in the between the fandom and like Warner Brothers and the people, the people who are trying to make everything politically correct and race swap and gender swap everyone. There's this big divide, and a lot of these people are traditionally liberal. And they're saying, guys, can't I just have Ariel the way I saw her? Like, you want to remake it, fine, but actually remake it. Don't just swap her for no reason. I don't particularly care. I wasn't, Little Mermaid's Little Mermaid. I don't care. But the point is,
can I just say for the record, I have a dear friend who I won't give his name away, but we would tease about the fact that you'd watch Ariel and say, is it just me, or was she kind of prettier as a mermaid? And then it hits you. A, you're talking about a comic book character, but B, you're talking about a mythical creature that's a half fish. That's when you realize that, you can swap characters and do what you want, but at the end of the day, random recognitions of characters and who they are, as I've said all along, guys, I'll confess to you, I've said it to this show before, Snow White was my first girlfriend. She'll always have my heart. I am never going to be taken away by that until I met Princess Leia. Then the relationship got complicated. But what I'm tipping on with what you're saying, Alex, is that I think that's very, very indicative. I had not been aware of any of those facts that you just said.
Yeah. Quick way to sum this up is, the thing is, this divide is happening because what's happening in Japan is actively going against the woke culture. Like, that's been a very, their stories are very traditional. Again, you go back and you look, a lot of their stuff you would recognize as common themes in American comics 20, 30 years ago. And other pop culture references, but now the artists, the creators, they are actively opposing the woke culture. So there is this war that's developing, this ideology it's developing, and there are people all around the world who recognize woke culture for what it is. That's the bigger message here. There are people who are seeing it and they're fighting back every way in their own way, and that's the point. We have to do that. We have to win the philosophical argument, which brings me back to Susan. Susan, you don't have to be Captain America to have an influence in the people around you. That's the beauty of this. Like I said, oftentimes the most important people aren't the people that you see. It's the people off to the side. You know somebody who knows somebody. That can be the most important thing. But I'm just saying, be a part of the conversation. And maybe you don't need to speak at the thing. Maybe you know someone who should be up there talking. You go and you get them, and you browbeat them until they actually run for office or go do something. It doesn't have to be big. That's the thing, is we were looking for big things. The big things are the distractions. It's the little things. It is the little things that we have to take. It is your county. Again, it's your county prosecutor that matters. It's your city council. It's your PTA. It's these things, the school board. These are the things that actually matter in your daily life. And here's the thing: if we own all of that, season 2, we're going to start saying these are the things you need to start arguing for. This is how you argue for it. This is what how you want to approach these things. As we do this over the next few years, we're going to be able to have those big victories. where we really do take that power back. We do start to reduce the debt. We actually bring prosperity back, that we're squandering with the destruction of money. I mean, like the very concept of money right now is being destroyed with how much we're spending. That's our point. Susan, it's easy to say, I'm a person, I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too busy, I have too many kids, I'm at work too long, I don't know anything about politics. There's always an excuse. History is made by the little people who show up at the right time. That is what happens. And yes, don't ever doubt that prayer works. But prayer is combined with action. David slew Goliath through his faith in the Lord, and with a quick snap of his wrist with that stone and that sling. It's action and faith combined. We win if we believe it hardest and if we believe it longest. We don't have to carry everything. You don't have to be Captain America on the front line, strapping the shield to your broken arm, saying, I can do this all day. You don't have to do that. You can be the guy or the gal who shows up and says, okay, these are the people I need to know. These are the people here. And you know the person, and you convince them to run. Or maybe you do have a solution. You say, hey, I know this sounds like a crazy idea, but here's the solution to this little problem that we have here. Or maybe you just man a phone bank and you make phone calls to get the right person elected. It's little things that make the biggest difference. And that's in every aspect of life. If you it's easy to say, I'm not whatever, fill in the blank. But what I'm here to tell you is the history of the world is full of people who change everything because they showed up at the right place at the right time. It's not always the people you expect to change the world. And I think if we could wave a magic wand and actually see who really changed the world, it's not even the people whose names that we know. It's the people who inspired those people to move. It's the people who made those people possible. For every soldier on the field, Nick, you should actually know this better than I do, but my understanding is that for every frontline combat soldier, there's somewhere between 20 to 100 non-coms. Isn't that correct?
I couldn't verify that for you at this time, but what I would say, just piggybacking off what you're saying and looking at our team checking in tonight, I think the question that it comes down to is this. The choice that has to be made is, are we going to be victors or victims? And I don't mean a victim like someone out there, you guys are playing a manipulative role as a victim. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, are we going to be victors in pursuing our beliefs, acting in whatever capacity we feel comfortable with? And Susan, to your point, once again, what I appreciate so much about your attendance on this show is your courageous vulnerability that you share with all of us. You're so open and transparent. I always appreciate that, and I think that's a guiding source you have on here. And I'd be willing to bet that that's a courage you have and you share with others, which probably would be, maybe that's your secret weapon. That's your ability to relate to others and have them lower their guard so you can talk to them because you have the capacity to share that kind of openness with them. So good on you for that. That might be your $1 million ticket right there, is just being exactly who you are. But the question I come back to is the concept of, will we be victorious in pursuing whatever that capacity may be? Or will we fall victim or prey to those who are willing to impose agendas or philosophies or whatnot? And again, I never want it to be an us versus them, but I do think that it has got to be about the perspective, whether it's, again, as we've said on the show, bad ideas are combated by good ideas, and given the durability of a good idea, it lasts longer because it works, because it's true, and because it's just. I think earlier you made a point, Alex, I want to sneak this in here. If season 1 has been the way I view it is this show, and I'm already projecting ahead for another 2 seasons, is if season 1 could have a theme behind it, it would be the how. Or excuse me, it would be the what. Season 1 would be the what. What are we doing? What's going on? What's the process of a show? What's the process of politics? What's the process of, fundamentally, what the heck is going on? Season 2, where we want to go next, is okay, now we've identified what it is we're talking about. And I think that Titan contributed on this side. I was drawing from that kind of guidance, that ability for discipleship. Okay, now that we understand or can encapsulate or can visualize the what, next we move to the how. We move to that. We've come out of the observational, analytical definition of what we're talking about, and now we're moving into that tactical, that operational. Okay, what is it that we're doing? What now we're shifting into the how. Looking at points of contact, everybody coming in with, hey, I here's the point of contact for this office here. Here's this office over here. These are the dates that these offices are running. I mean, Facebook pages have all these. I mean, the way that people are communicating on this is phenomenal. So this season is the what. What does it mean to have a show? What does it mean to engage people? What is it that we believe, and what is it that we're talking about? And what are we willing to do about it? Next season is the, okay, how do we make that happen? And I would say, not that we have to push it off for another season after that. We're not looking to go into syndication here. I'm saying what we do after that is the concept of the highest level, which is why. Because that why will feed. I think that why is woven seamlessly throughout all of this. The why can be whether it's a religious perspective, a philosophical belief about liberty, a concept of patriotism and service, whatever you want it to be. But I think that where we're going to turn the tide and why we need a little decompression time, why we need a little time to put thought into this, is that we care about this as deeply as all of you do. And we want this to be something that we contribute, that has meaning. And I think that that's the question that if we leave tonight, that we think about. How do we do this now? Not out of desperation, not how are we supposed to put up with this, but okay, how am I going to go about doing this? How am I going to wake up a patriot every day, not just on the 4th of July and every 4 years at an election or watching the Olympics, you know? How am I going to be a patriot today? And how am I going to help my neighbor do the same? That's what this show, I think, has grown into. That's why I'm not worried about whether we have a break of X or Y amount of time. It doesn't matter. Because what we've developed through this are relationships. We don't have fans, we have teammates. We don't have subscribers, we have friends. That's a powerful lineup. 272 words change the world. Imagine if any of us were out to do that.
On that note, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's been with us today and who's listening in replay. Y'all are just as important. Don't ever stop to think that just because you're not commenting live that you aren't important to all of us. And more important, that you're not important to what's happening out there in the world today. To jump off what Nick said, for me I think to be the best patriot, to wake up every day and say, how do I be the best patriot? Trick there is, be the best human you can be, first and foremost. We've got to live bigger lives than just the lives we live around us. I think if you're the best person that you can be, and just say, how do I help my neighbor? I think we'll get by. I think we'll get through this. But we have to take an active role. We can no longer wait for the next Rush Limbaugh or the next Donald Trump or the next anyone. You have to be that person in your life. where you are with your friends, your neighbors. Know that you've got friends here. We're going to keep having this conversation, I assure you. And it's going to change. It's going to change the world. I know it because we're part of this is the time. And I'm glad that you're all here. I appreciate that. Nick, be safe as you go around, and just stay clear of Grendel. And I think everything should be fine. I expect a nice helmet with the horns on it when you get back. And if you don't, I'm going to be very, very disappointed in you.
Yeah, guys, thank you all for the honor of letting us be welcomed into your homes and into your time. You have a decision of how you spend the most precious of all commodities, which is time. And you've taken that chance on us. We thank you. We believe in you. God bless all of you. Be safe. And thank you for loving one another and keeping the faith. And here's upwards and onwards to better things always. Take care.